Okay, so welcome back to the buyer process part 2. So part 1, just as a quick recap, was all about that first initial meeting. So having a meeting at the office, getting the buyer or the potential buyer to meet with us at the office, move them to the conference room. We build rapport. We establish the framework for a win-win relationship. We get the buyer to define their needs and their wants in their perfect home. We then verify their financial comfort zone. What are their parameters? Where are they comfortable? We also want to know how much of that do they want to spend. From there, we transition into speaking about roles and expectations that we have of one another because we're operating as an intentional and a proactive team. We then are going to talk about confidentiality, making sure that anything that is said in that conversation or any future conversations remains confidential. We'll then transition into the buyer's rep agreement if that's necessary or if an agent chooses to use one. And then some agents use them, some don't.
Really?
Yep. I don't know why. If it were me, I'm a big fan of a written agreement.
So if they didn't use it,
then there's really nothing that keeps that buyer with them.
yeah.
And again, like Joe was saying earlier, sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. And I hear that a lot when I've taught this class before. Some are like, oh no, it's just not necessary, or no, I knew them, so I didn't feel the need to do it, or nope, I trusted them, so I didn't use it. Anyway, again, up to you. So we talk about the buyer's rep agreement. We talk about moving into meeting number 2, where we then get to go on our showings. So that's where that's the point that this meeting or this class picks up. So the second meeting, we want to make sure that we review their buyer's needs to make sure that nothing changed from the first meeting, which was just a few days ago. And it's good because it helps them regain focus. If we've prepared our showing packages for them, which again, personal preference, some agents do, some agents don't. This would be the time to reveal the showing packages and then explain to them how each one of those listings aligns with their criteria. So if you've done the legwork in highlighting the features that meet their criteria, that's a really good visual to show them, hey, these are strong contenders based on what you need and what you want, and then these, not so much. You can make a copy of their driver's licenses if necessary, if that's something that you do as part of your own personal process, and then you can go and show. So remember, you only want to show homes to buyers who are motivated, qualified, and loyal. So in the car, we've had our second meeting. We've made sure that their needs didn't change. We've made sure that we've explained our showing packages to them and showed them the listings that most align with their criteria. So now we're going to hop in the car. Now, like Joe was saying at our previous class this morning, when she shows, sometimes she prefers that client to be in the car with her because you can keep the conversation going. You can get a better understanding of what they feel as they're approaching a neighborhood or as they're driving up in the driveway of a home. You'll get more color to how they feel when you're around them more, which makes sense. So if the client is going to be riding with you, you want to start engaging them by continuing to ask questions. So as you're entering into a neighborhood, what did you think of the neighborhood? So this is good because typically if a buyer isn't crazy about a neighborhood, it's going to be pretty hard to convince them to fall in love with the house within that neighborhood, right? So if the client doesn't like it, then dialogue could kind of go like this. You know, I really don't like that neighborhood. Oh gosh, you know, these properties just aren't well maintained. This is not what I thought it was. It's not in the right part of town, whatever the reason. Okay. So let's move on, right? It's been my experience that when people don't love a neighborhood, then they really don't buy the home. So now, since we don't want to waste your time, how about I recommend that we move on to the next home on our tour. Really, there's no obligation to go inside a house if it doesn't meet your client's criteria and their needs. So it's not even about sightseeing or just seeing a home for the sake of seeing it. Remember, we want to be intentional with our time and with our clients' time. We are on more of a journey to find their perfect home. And if we know right away that they don't love the neighborhood that the home is a part of, we're really kind of setting ourselves up to potentially get into a situation where they like the home, but they hate the neighborhood. They move forward with the home, and then they have buyer's remorse, which is what we never want. Okay. Now, if the client does like the neighborhood, then you want to drive in front of the home and ask them, what do you think about the home's curb appeal? First impressions, what do you think driving up? If they don't like the curb appeal, it's sort of the same line of questioning. Let's move on. It's my experience that when people don't like the exterior of a home, they usually don't buy that home. So since we don't want to waste your time, Mr. and Mrs. Client, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I recommend that we move on to the next one on our tour today, right? Because here's the thing. In personal story here, when we bought our first home, it was in Lumberton, and the only reason that we even went to see it was because it was within our price range and it had the appropriate amount of bedrooms. That was the only reason. It had 3 pictures on the MLS that we could see, the exterior, 1 picture of the inside and of the backyard. That was it. So we were like, what the heck? We had seen 6 homes prior to that one. It was the last one on our tour, and it was dark. It was dark, because it was getting early. It was getting dark early. So we pull up to it. We're already tired. I don't like it. It's red brick. I don't like red brick. Just a personal preference. I find it very hard to landscape around red brick. That's just me. But we walk in. There's no electricity. The home had been vacant for every bit of 6 months. We walk in, loved it. Fell in love with the bones. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that was the home that we ended up buying. But do you guys know that for the entire 4 years that we were there, I did not like the red brick. It never grew on me. I love the inside. We totally changed everything inside of it, but I never ever came around to loving that red brick. It didn't make me feel any less about my home, because I still loved my home and I was highly emotionally attached to it. But it was just not anything that ever made me excited when I pulled up in my driveway, right? So again, you want to try to eliminate buyer's remorse wherever you can. I never regretted buying it because we got a heck of a deal on it. It was a short sale. Yeah. We got a great deal on it, but it never made me just go, oh, when I would drive up in my own driveway. Now, when I went in the door, that was a different story. But anyway, the point here is to try to eliminate buyer's remorse as much as we can. Now, if the client likes the neighborhood, right, and they like the curb appeal, now it's time to go inside, right? So you want to ring the doorbell, unlock the door, identify yourself if necessary. Now, a seller should not be there. Should not be there. But if they are, you want to identify yourself right away. Typically, if a seller is there and they're not supposed to be, they will leave when they know it's being shown. If they want to hover, then I would advise you to kind of say, okay, well, my client probably isn't very comfortable viewing the home while the owner is here. Is there a better time that we can come and see this? Or did your agent remind you about the showing today? Because they may not know, and they may say, oh my gosh, let me just step out or something. That's usually what happens. So let your client go on in. So go in, look around. We don't want to be a tour guide, right? Because it's important that the client can what? Self-discover and see what they love without feeling led in any one direction. Okay, so go in, look around, open up any door, turn on any light that you want. I'll be behind you as you view the home, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. So again, we don't want to play a tour guide. We really want to tour the home with a logical point of view, a logical eye. So we can try to discover the things that a client who's emotional may miss, especially if they walk in and they just love everything about it, right? It's easy to overlook things, key features that maybe they wanted that maybe the home doesn't have. A good example is my mom. My mom bought a house a few years ago. She walked in and absolutely loved it. She fell in love immediately as soon as she walked in the front door. Every room got better and better. It wasn't until the day that she moved in that she realized the home did not have a fireplace. Didn't have a fireplace because it was colder when she had moved into it, and she was thinking, oh, it would be so nice to go ahead and light the fire. No fireplace. And it drove her nuts because Christmas time comes around, you see the mantle, you know, she likes a fire. And so anyway, easy to overlook things when you're in the moment and excited about a property. So you're also going to make sure that the home contains all of the needs and the wants, right? And since you've done your homework and you've highlighted the things that the home shares with your buyer's criteria, you've done a lot of that work already. So you can kind of use that as a reminder of what it does and doesn't have. And it's good to kind of point out, especially if you're not hearing them say, oh, and this one has just what we needed, or this is just what we were looking for. Oh, and did you also see the fireplace? Especially if they noted that as a want, right? So pointing out those things that they indicated that they would like to have or needed, but maybe they haven't noticed. Okay, that's what we should do. Now, a good question to ask as you're touring the home, close to the end of that home tour, could you see yourself living in the home? If they're saying, you know, oh, if we really like it, but it really feels small, it's too small. So the good rule of thumb here is to repeat back to them their feedback. And we talk about this quite a bit. So you feel it's too small. Is there anything else? It's not up to us to disagree or debate it with them because after all, it's their version of a perfect home, right? Well, it doesn't have a view either. It's small and there's no view. Okay, so you feel that the home is too small and it has no view. Is there anything else? No. Okay, so then let's play a hypothetical game. If you had to buy a home today, and this is the only home available, would you buy it? If they tell you yes, we would still buy it, even though it's too small and it has no view, this is going to be the home that you're going to compare the next one to, okay? If they tell you no, then it's really fun and really dramatic to tear that showing sheet or the summary sheet from the MLS, tear it in half. That's a very visual way to tell them, okay, this is no longer a viable option. Let's move on. It also helps them to kind of forget about it whenever they see it being removed from the list. So I love that. Okay, then let's move on to the next. And this will help you compare one home to one home versus the home that you just toured against the three that you just saw, right? So 1 to 1. Now, what if they tell you, if we had to buy the home today and this is the only one available, we would buy it? Okay, that's different. So we have 6 more homes to see today. Would you still like to see those, or should we see how this one looks on paper? Now, odds are they're going to say, I want to see the other ones, right? Any buyer probably would. Then, okay, let's continue looking. However, if they've fallen in love with it and they are kind of on the fence and no, I really don't want to see any others, okay, then let's see how this looks on paper, right? So one key differentiator is how excited they are about the home. So you want to look for that, okay? It's a good indicator. Another way to have them focus on the home that they've seen compared to the one that they just saw is, do you like this home better than the previous one? If they do, then you can tear that home package in half, and then the one that they've just seen, home number 2, that's going to be the new one that the next one is compared to, right? So 1 to 1. This will help them stay focused until only one contender basically remains. Because if you're only comparing 1 to 1, it's 50-50. This one or that one versus this one or the other 4. Yeah. It's overwhelming for a buyer. And if you guys have ever been a buyer, then you understand how this works, especially when you love certain things about different homes. So if you ask them, hey, if this is the only one available on the market and you had to buy, would you buy it? If they tell you no, tear it up. Okay. Now, once you've found their version of a perfect home, it's time to talk about, hey, let's take a look at this on paper. Let's look at the numbers. Now, if you sense hesitation, or if they outright say, okay, but I'd like some time to think about it, or I need to sleep on it, or I need to pray about it, or whatever their reasoning, let them know that is more than okay. More than okay. But let me ask one more question. if the home sells tonight, are you going to be okay with that? Right? Because you want to instill a little sense of urgency. We don't want to push them, and we don't want to be like a salesy type approach or aggressive, but we do need to kind of be realistic in the expectation. If the home sells tonight, are you going to be okay with that? Someone may have looked at the home last night, thought about it, slept on it, just like what you're wanting to do, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, and it's in an agent's office right now writing an offer. So I'll be okay if it sells, but will you? Now, if they tell you, okay, yes, I'll be fine if it sells. Okay, what's your plan B in case that it does? And they may say, oh, well, we like that other one that we saw. It didn't check all the boxes, but we were fine with it. Or maybe they don't have a plan B, and then they have to start all over again, right? So if they don't have a plan B, a good rule of thumb to kind of nudge them is to say, okay, let's just complete the contract. We're not going to submit it. We're just going to complete it. We'll complete our offer. I'll send it home with you. If you decide that you're ready to pull the trigger and make the offer, when you wake up in the morning, call me and I'll come get it immediately. Okay, that way we don't waste any kind of unnecessary time. Does that sound okay? So you're putting the ball back in their court. You're respecting their timeline. You're respecting their need to pray about it, sleep on it, talk about it some more. However, you're saying, here's what we need to have done. I'll send it home with you. If you're ready in the morning when you wake up, call me. We'll get this thing done. Okay? Do you guys have any questions on this? Okay. Does it all make sense so far? Okay, cool. Now, what about the famous lowball offers, right? You've got clients, I'm sure, who are saying, well, hey, let's come in this low, right? If a buyer wants to make an offer that's extremely below the market, you want to verify what the motivating factor is there. You want to know and understand the reasoning as to why they would want to come in that low. So a good question to ask them is, okay, we can come in low, but are you looking for a home or are you looking for a deal? Most of the time they want both. They want to feel like they've won or that they've gotten a great price on a great property. So another question, okay, so you want a home and you want a deal. Are you prepared to lose the home trying to make that deal? Well, no, of course not. I want the home. Of course you do. So let me tell the seller what you're willing to offer so that we don't offend her or get into a counter situation and allow someone else to come in and submit a better offer. Okay. If this is your perfect home, I don't want to take any chances, right? So let's make your first offer your best offer. If they still want a lowball, we can do that. Of course, you know, we can always do that. I think it's just so important that we manage the expectation of what could happen if we went that direction. Okay, so that's what this dialogue covers. We can do that. However, this is what you can expect to happen as a potential result or a potential response to that lowball offer. Okay. Now, maybe the buyer doesn't understand how a seller could be offended by a super low offer, right? So this is good dialogue to help cover you there. So if we can't justify our offer price beyond the fact that we're just looking for a deal, then the message that we're communicating to the seller is that you have to lose in order for me to win. That's not good, because what happens is we create an adversary from the very beginning, and that adversary creating that is not going to be the best approach, given that we're probably going to be asking that same seller to make certain repairs or any other type of concession while we're under contract. So please understand that I will support you and do whatever you tell me, but I would not be doing my job if I didn't tell you of the potential consequences that go along with this approach when we're coming in with a very low offer. So tell me, what would you like to do? Right? So we're informing them. We're trying to make it to where they can make an informed and an intelligent decision on the way that they're going to move forward. They could just try to go in low because that's what someone told them to do, with no real other understanding that that's not what they're supposed to do, you know, or that's what they saw on TV, so that's what they're going to do too. So it's our job to make sure that we can explain to them that, okay, we can do that. However, we need to be prepared for these types of consequences if we were to do that. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's review then the complete buyer process. So why are we doing this? Because we know that success stems from those duplicable processes and systems. The processes are in place to help lower the risk for you guys that comes with working with people who say that they're buyers, who may not actually be real buyers, okay? So step 1 is to meet in the office. Why the office?
Oh, just shows how serious they are.
Right. And it's a good opportunity to help nurture that relationship, right? Because face-to-face is always your better bet. Then they can really get a true understanding of who you are and how fun you are and how great you're going to be to work with, okay? Second step is to move to the conference room. Conference room is important because it's neutral. Exactly.
I was still like, I don't know, I'd still meet in my office, but that makes sense because you're going to have paperwork to spread out. And there's like no room in my mom's office at all.
Yeah.
So that makes total sense.
Well, and you're right. It's also private because most of us share a space. Most of us share spaces. And so sometimes, especially when a person has to talk about their finances, they may not want other ears to hear them.
In the room, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So conference room gives you a chance to kind of close the door and it's just you and the client. Number 3, getting on the selling channel, which simply means getting in the right frame of mind to have that conversation with the buyer. Step 4 is to build rapport. Do you guys remember the acronym? If you're unsure of which direction to go when breaking the ice, FORD. Yay, Lori. Very, very good. So FORD, family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Okay. You remembered FORD. That works for me. Okay. So setting the tone, basically establishing the framework of how your meeting is going to go, right? So you want to make sure that there are those 3 messages that are going to be conveyed no matter what. It's a win-win relationship. That's what we're after. We're going to uncover your needs, your wants, and help you to prioritize them. We're then going to make sure that your financial comfort zone is thoroughly discussed to understand those parameters. We also want to make sure that we discuss the roles and the expectations that we're going to have of each other in our collaborative team. And then finally, we want to make sure that we close to a working relationship with the buyer's rep agreement if you choose to use it. I, of course, would encourage you to use it. So here's some supplemental materials. These examples should be within your packet as well. So this is a good template to use for your thank you letter. So whoever your buyer is, dear John or Jane or whoever, I really appreciate you entrusting me with the duty of helping you to find your perfect home. I enjoyed meeting and spending time with you. I look forward to our journey in getting your perfect home. Now, at this time, you might be asking yourself, what comes next? Okay, here's a checklist of what's going to come up in the process. So viewing homes. Do you guys, I love this so much because it's thanking them for meeting with you, but it's also saying, okay, here's everything that's coming up that you need to be aware of. So the ball's still moving forward in that productive direction. Okay. Now, maybe you meet with a buyer and they meet with another realtor because they're interviewing several. And they decide that working with you is not something that they want to move forward with. That's okay. You send them a thank you note anyway. Okay. So if at the end of that first meeting, the buyer lets you know, okay, look, you've been great, but we've got a friend that we promised. We were just trying to get, a second opinion for ourselves. Okay. So personal note here, although we're not going to be working together, I wish you success in the purchase of your next home. Okay. If I can ever be a future service to you or anyone that you know, please feel free to contact me. I enjoyed meeting and spending time with you. And remember, high achievement always takes place in the framework of high expectation. I love that because you're basically saying, look, I hope that the direction that you went is going to satisfy your needs, right? So your expectations are high. They should be. I also hope your results are high as well. And I love that because you're wishing them well. It hits all the high notes for me. And that goes such a long way. even if they decide not to work with you, maybe they have a friend who's in the same boat and they don't know who to work with, your name will come up first. Okay, so part 2 is a lot smaller than part 1, obviously, but I want to hear from you guys what resonated with you guys today as we went through the buyer process.
I just liked that I was left early and things like that. What I got what I wanted to get out of it. Just being able to picture the process.
Picture the process,
From the
great.
beginning.
Yes.
Me too.
Do you guys feel that having a process is helpful?
For me, it is. I mean,
I like processes too. I like being able to check things off the list and say, okay, I did that, what's next?
I'm getting great hands off track, but
Mhm.
you know, naturally in the next office, it's different.
Oh, yeah.
Forget anything.
And I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Sure.
To
Sure.
retain
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to see this.
Good. Good, good. Yep. And so as a reminder, the 47 vital activities when working a buyer should also be in your packets. If they're not, let me know and I can send that your way. But that serves as a good focus tool as well, since we are all list people, to help us make sure that we are doing the things that need to be done when working with buyers. And then that whole buyer process that we went through today is just more of the conversational aspect when you're face-to-face with a buyer and moving them through the process to make sure that they're somebody who's motivated, to make sure that they are somebody who's qualified financially, and also somebody who's loyal, so that they are a real buyer and not somebody who just claims to be. What about you, Christy? You like the process aspect too?
I do. I don't want to miss anything. You know what I mean?
Yep.
When you're new.
Right.
It's new. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, I need a checklist just to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that we went over everything.
Great.
Yeah, I was looking through. You said you'd send us
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're going to get the Your Role, My Role sheet.
And there was something else that came up that you said that you'd send us. Where was it?
The criteria sheet.
Oh, okay, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that too.
Okay, not a problem. Yeah, and so I've got the logo.
logo.
Our Remax One logo is on each one of those. So I can send it to you guys in a Word document so that if you're part of a team and your team has a logo, you can include that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to have it ready to print out.
Yep.
Have it ready to go.
It'll be there.
Yay.
Do you guys have any other questions from any of the material that we covered today? Okay, excellent. Well, tomorrow we're going to do a lunch and learn right here at 11:30. We've got Sally Benatar with First American Home Warranty Company. She's going to come in and kind of go through the process of what a home warranty does, how to obtain one, timing, those types of things. And then on Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to do like a mini session where it's maybe 45 minutes. We're going to talk about 9 quick tips to boost your productivity. And then Thursday, we are going to cover in the morning the 5-step follow-up method. So prospecting to those for sale by owners. And then Thursday afternoon, we're going to host a mastermind group. And if you're in that group, then you'll get an email from me on Wednesday. So we've got a good week of goodies. And just as a reminder, if you guys can't be in the office for whatever reason, they're always available on Zoom. So all you have to do is create a free Zoom account and you can log in from wherever you are to attend class. But from what I understand, it's going to be great, cool weather for the rest of the week. So hopefully you guys will be out and about. Yeah.
It's going to get cold again?
So I think tomorrow the highs are going to be in the 60s and the lows in the 50s.
Oh, okay,
I'm
cool.
so
Yeah,
excited.
Jesus, last week.
Last week, yeah, it wasn't a really.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
And then it got hot again.
Yeah. I
No.
know.
Texas.
Gotta love it.
Right. Okay. I will get in my office. I will email you guys those goodies. And please reach out to me anytime if I can answer any questions or help you guys with anything else.
Okay.